I'm going to show you how to make a lot of money using the Pilatus and medium cargo missions. Heavy cargo missions are not available as yet at the time of making of this video, so all we can do is medium. This is a Pilatus. It costs nearly 5 million credits, and if you don't have that sort of money, you can buy a second-hand one, or you can just plow away. See one of my other videos about how to make money quickly to save it up for the Pilatus. Importantly, you will have to top up your fuel. Fuel runs out because of a bug, so do set up a shortcut or a keybind to top up your fuel. You also need to set up increase sim rate and decrease sim rate shortcuts or keybinds, because we'll be using that function. And if you don't want to use that function, don't bother watching any further of this video, because we rely on that to make money fast. Whilst in cruise, we'll be flying on autopilot using the heading hold function and using the set current heading function. We will not be using GPS or nav because those are not working as yet, they are bugged. So set autopilot current heading is a shortcut that we'll have to get, and also we need to get a shortcut for autopilot heading hold to set the autopilot to follow the heading. Increase heading bug to turn right. This is your little bug that moves to the right when you want to turn right on autopilot, and decrease heading bug to turn left whilst on autopilot. Those are also important shortcuts to set up. Another bind that I really strongly recommend you do is your increase and decrease autopilot reference altitude. That's the altitude that you want the autopilot to go to or to stay at when the autopilot is functioning and is active. So I suggest that you set up those as well. You need to set up your EFB. You only have to do this once. See the bright red areas, the dark red rather areas? Those are very high mountains, very high terrain. Yellow is a bit lower, and green is basically very low sort of level. So this map will let you know how high terrain is between where you are and between where you want to be. But in order to have that, you have to set it up to terrain highlight. Don't use the default layout, use the terrain highlight layout, so that you'll be able to, for example, tell what altitude to use for your flight plans, so that you don't collide with mountains between your departure and your destination. Very, very useful feature. And finally, if things really get out of control, you're in fast sim, on autopilot, whatever, out of the blue, the plane's going nuts, it's about to crash, you don't know how to save it at the time, hit escape. Cancel the mission, abort it, try again, do not lose a plane. Or you can try to troubleshoot it, but in that case, immediately reduce sim rate. If you're flying on fast sim rate, immediately first reaction when things go really wrong, get to normal sim rate, or even slower than normal, to give you time to troubleshoot the problem. Do not try to save the plane in super fast sim mode. It's just not gonna work. So either escape and abort, or slow down and think things through and troubleshoot it. Okay, so the first step, of course, is to find the right mission, a mission that will pay you enough, and I would say anything between 500,000 and 700,000 or even more credits is enough. That's a lot of credits, and once you get the bonuses, you'll be looking at over 1 million. So let's find, I'm in Australia, by the way. I like Australia because there's not a lot of weather, and the weather that you do get doesn't give you very low visibility, so you can still land without many major problems. So we found a mission here that pays about 600,000. Let's have a look at the airport now, at the destination airport. Look at the length of the runway and the width of the runway. Do you feel comfortable landing at this elevation at a runway this long and this wide? I'd say you should. It's a pretty long runway and it's pretty wide, but again, it's up to you. If you don't feel comfortable with it, don't take the mission. The Pilatus lands at a pretty fast rate, about 90 knots. That's the speed that you'd be looking at when you touch down. So you don't want a runway that's too narrow or too short. Okay, so we're going to accept this mission, 618,000 credits. Hopefully we have a plane nearby, because we need to ferry a plane, and that costs a lot of credits sometimes to move a plane into the location. In this case, the cheapest one will be 15,000 credits. That's not too expensive because we're going to make over $1 million. So I'd say we accept the mission and see how we go. Now, the first thing you want to do is change the flight plan. You want to get rid of all the little waypoints in between. Make it a straight line. You want to be able to get on autopilot, get on fast sim, and go from A to B, or A to Z if you like, with as little of having to maneuver as possible. All right. You also want to set the altitude for the flight plan to something less than what it usually gives you. 290, level 290, which is 29,000 feet. The Pilatus will not fly at more than 20,000. You'll suffocate out of oxygen. It's a bug. Not that it matters, because we're not going to follow the flight plan altitude in the end anyway. We'll cancel IFR, but we'll get to that issue in due course. At the moment, let's set the cruise altitude to 110 level, maybe even a 50 level if we're flying over water. So then 5,000 feet is just fine. 110 is a pretty cool level that I like to select. It gets you over most mountains. It won't get you over the Himalayas, and you have to do like 180. But it'll get you over most mountains, and you're pretty safe. So that's a pretty good cruise altitude, 110. And you want to get rid of all these waypoints, so we can delete them, remove them one by one. All right. So let's do that. Okay, so we're selecting each waypoint and removing it one by one, and then don't forget to file the flight plan with ATC. If you don't, it's just not going to work. So click on File Plan with ATC. You can also send it to send the route to avionics. It doesn't really make much difference, but I still do it anyway. And now once you filed it, you will see that there will be one straight line on the flight path. See, all those little waypoints are gone. You've got a straight line. So we're on the way. Oops, the closest plane was a Cessna Caravan. I don't like those planes. We're not flying that. We want to fly the Pilatus. Pilatus is the plane we want. So let's see if we've got any Pilatus planes in the vicinity. I do have a few planes with my company. I've bought a few. In fact, I've got over 30 planes altogether. But there are some planes here. There's a Pilatus in the vicinity that costs about, I think, 61,000 to bring over. Right, there it is. So let's select that one. Then let's click on management and have a look if it needs any maintenance work. You'd want to do that before you bring the plane over. Sometimes maintenance is required, and maybe you can't even afford it. But look, all these stats here are good. They're in the green. You don't have the option of updating the checkup. If you did, you should use that option. Update your checkup. It costs you 30 grand. Update the checkup and check whether the plane is still good. In this case, we're flying the plane over, and that costs us some 60 grand, I think. And we can start the mission. When the plane or when the next scene loads up, you want to go into plane management and do an update of your maintenance check. That costs 30 grand. Again, because we're gonna make like $1.5 million or whatever, or over $1 million, it doesn't really matter. It's an expense that's worth it. You want to wash the plane if you can, and you want to update the checkup to see if there's been any damage to it, for example, during the process of having it brought over. In this case, the option wasn't available, so we're just going to fly it. We're going to make 618,000 credits plus bonuses. Let's fly. Here's our plane, and the first thing I'm going to do is skip the nonsense. I'm not going to be removing chocks and other bits. That is just nonsense. You do not lose any points for skipping this part, not at this level. We're making millions here. You might lose a couple of points in terms of your experience or the money that you get. Just skip it. Just don't walk around the plane removing bits. Just skip it. Oh well, or do what you like. I'm skipping it. Okay, so let's skip this part. And we found ourselves in the cockpit. Now at this point, there's a couple of things to do and to look at. First of all, I'm going to remove the yoke. It's in the way, and it's in the way of a very important set of buttons because those deal with temperature. If things get too cold, you want to put your propeller heater on and also your frame heating on for 3 or 1 minutes or whatever. So those are buttons that are important in case the temperature goes too low, and this is your temperature indicator here. For me, if it's -5 degrees or less, I will put the propeller heater on. Next thing to look at is fuel. We've got low fuel. I'll top it up after takeoff. Let's take off on less weight, or you can top it up now if you want, but I won't. Press enter to request or announce taxi.
Yankee Whiskey Lima uniform, traffic Pilatus Delta. Oscar India November Sierra is taxiing to runway tree.
If you had to request it because it was a manned airport, you gotta wait for your clearance, and then once clearance comes, you gotta acknowledge it. Do not move the plane before that happens. Look at the distance to hold short. If it's too high, skip it. Don't waste time. Well, up to you, but I wouldn't. I'd just skip it if it's too high. In this case, it's pretty high, so I am skipping it. And by the way, if you want, you can disable that lollipop if you think that's cheating or you don't want to have it there. All right, you can toggle it off. Okay, so I'm at the start of the runway. The first thing to do is to set up the autopilot altitude using the keybind or the shortcut that I've set at the beginning. Set it to 110 or 11,000 feet. That's the flight plan altitude. Okay, gotta make sure that our flaps are on 15. Because I've skipped, the sim may have reset some of these things, so I gotta make sure they're all set up correctly. Flaps have to be on 15 before takeoff, and they are. Okay, and then we press enter to announce or request takeoff.
Yankee Whiskey Lima uniform, traffic Pilatus Delta. Oscar India November Sierra taking off runway tree east departure.
Now I can take my brakes off and enter the runway and full throttle and take off. When doing this, keep an eye on the engine temperature gauge. If it gets yellow, if it gets too hot, just ease down on the throttle a little bit, not too much obviously. This is a very crucial time to have a lot of power. But here we are, we're taking off. Keep it straight using the rudder. There might be a bit of wind, but you got to keep it straight. And of course we can retract our landing gear as soon as we're up, and it tells us now climb to 11,000 feet. First thing to do, of course, is to speak to ATC because that's we'll be prompted to do that in our mission steps, but also turn the plane to the right to face the flight path, to align with the flight path, and retract flaps whenever you're at the appropriate altitude. Whenever ATC speaks to you, it's very important to reply to them immediately. If you don't, you will lose some reputation points. Again, not a huge deal. You can get them back in the next mission. But yeah, it's important to respond to ATC pretty much immediately.
Roger, Pilatus India, November Sierra.
And we're now lined up with the flight path, so we can set the autopilot heading, hold the current heading, and then turn the autopilot master on. We also press enter to request IFR clearance, because that's what the mission tells us to do, but we're going to cancel it as soon as we can.
Melbourne Center, Pilatus Delta. Oscar India November, Sierra 3 miles northeast of Yankee Whiskey Lima uniform, 4,400 foot, request IFR to Yankee Alpha Lima, Charlie ready to copy.
make sure to reply to them. Again, that's a requirement.
Pilatus Delta, Oscar India November Sierra cleared to Yankee Alpha, Lima, Charlie Airport this file. Squawk 2, tree 56.
Okay, and now that we've got IFR, so we've complied with the requirements, we now want to cancel IFR so we can be free. We don't have to be told by ATC how high to go, how low to go, increase, decrease altitude, respond to them, handoffs and all sorts of things. We want to be on a fast sim mode to go as fast as possible. Now we have to acknowledge the instruction, by the way, because that's a requirement. We're still in IFR, but we want to be able to go as fast as possible in fast sim rate. And it's too fast in fast sim rate to actually respond to ATC whenever they contact you. When you cancel IFR, there is no contact from ATC at all. We're not going to talk to anyone until the very end of the flight. So here we go. Let's request cancel IFR. And wow, that's loading up. See those blue squares, blue boxes? Again, you can get rid of those if they bother you using the visual assistance options that I've showed you before.
Melbourne Center, Pilatus India November Sierra. Cancel IFR at this time.
And of course the blue boxes disappear when you cancel IFR, but they're gonna show up again when we do our final approach. So again, you know, some people don't like those assistance things, and if you want to turn them off, turn them off. So anyway, the plane is in autopilot, we're on course, but we're not going up, so we have to set our vertical speed to do that, and for that we have to use the vertical speed control knob and make vertical speed into a positive value. Here it is, here's the vertical speed control. If we move the mouse wheel down, the vertical speed goes up. You can set it to 3 or 4. Don't set it too high because you'll lose speed, but 3 or 4, even 5 or 6 is fine, and you will see the plane climbing in no time. It'll climb all the way up until it reaches the altitude reference level. If you haven't set an altitude reference level, it's going to climb through the roof, it's going to climb over 20,000 feet, and you're going to die. The plane is going to get destroyed because of the bug. Also, you can now top up your fuel. I'm topping it up using the shortcut for topping up fuel. The plane is now climbing, and once it levels out, it's going to pick up some speed. So keep an eye on your airspeed there on the left, so that when it levels out you don't enter into overspeed. You want to be careful about that. I'm going to increase my vertical speed a little bit just to climb a little bit faster. And now I'm going to increase my sim rate. I'm going to go to the maximum by pressing the increase sim rate preset 4 times, one after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we are. We are now traveling at the maximum possible sim rate. The plane's still climbing, so it's going to level out, and you want to really be careful at that time because it's going to level out quite quickly and pick up speed very quickly after that climb. Here we go. Let's have a look at descent and final approach. So first of all, how low do we descend to, and secondly, how do we approach the runway? So let's have a look at the flight path, the flight plan, and see what altitude the runway is on. We're going to aim for about 2,000 feet above the runway altitude. Runway 13 is our runway, and the altitude is about 2,000 feet there. So we're looking at about 4,000 feet that we want our autopilot to descend us to. Next, let's have a look at the approach pattern at the destination airport. So let's zoom in on the EFB to have a look at the approach pattern. It's going to be something kinky and twisty, and here it is. This is how they want us to fly, and there's no way we're going to do this in the Pilatus. The Pilatus is too fast for this. It's just going to be difficult, and there's no reason to do it that way. at all. In fact, you don't get penalized for escaping this and taking the easy way, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down left, veer left from the flight path, and approach and turn right. But if we zoom in on the plane, we can see that it's actually a little bit to the right of the flight path, and it should be a little bit to the left of it, because that's the approach we're going to take. We're going to be veering left. So let's adjust our heading to the left a bit using the either the heading knob or the preset for the to increase or decrease the heading bug. So a little bit to the left, and we'll be crossing over to right where we want to be. And now we can even it out by turning it a little bit to the right, so we can remain parallel to the flight path and heading in the right direction, just a little bit on the left of it. Now let's get our descent on the way. Okay, so another quick look at the EFB and the flight plan, and we can see that it's 2,000 feet where the runway is. We're gonna descend with the autopilot to about 4,000 feet, and we can set that autopilot by using the selected altitude knob or our preset for reference altitude. So let's do that now. It was meant to be 4,000, not 5,000, so let's go down one more 1,000 feet to make it 4,000 like we're supposed to. And there it is, 4,000 feet, so that's the altitude that the autopilot's going to bring us down to when we set it on vertical navigation, vertical speed. And I usually activate that when I'm about 100 nautical miles from the destination airport. That's not a rule to be followed blindly, and it will depend on the topography and the geography and the approach. So have a look at the map, make sure there's nothing in the way. You don't want to tell your autopilot to fly you into a mountain. Okay, that little indicator in the front that says final, that's a bit cheaty, and if you don't want to use it, you can turn it off by turning off the assistance option. I like to use it because it tells me all the distances, but really it's up to you if you don't want to. So we're about 170 miles from the destination airport, and this is the vertical speed control that I'm going to use when I want to start descending. And the way to use it is mouse over it and use the mouse wheel to increase vertical speed, or decrease it really to make it negative, in order for the plane to start descending. And looking at the map, it seems that there's nothing really in the way, no big mountains, no big hills, no big obstacles that would stop us from descending between here and the destination. It looks safe. Okay, I'm about to activate the descent. You want to make sure before you do this that you have set a reference altitude so the autopilot doesn't go all the way to the ground. And you want to make sure that the reference altitude is also higher than the ground below you. So you have to be a little bit smart about it. I chose 4,000 feet. I knew there's nothing that's higher than that between where we're going to be and the runway, and that the runway is also lower than that. But you want to be careful when you set that up. Okay, so once that's done, we can get on that vertical speed control, set it to a negative figure, a -1, -2, -3 are absolutely fine. Just keep an eye on your airspeed, because that will increase as you're going down, and you don't want to overspeed. Don't want to go above that little checkered line. Now we're about close enough to announce our approach, and this is done by pressing enter in the career mode in missions, or by opening the communications box and looking up your airport in the nearest airports list, and then choosing announce position. If the airport you're landing at is a manned airport, you'll have to request clearance for full landing. That's usually an automated process with pressing enter and so forth, and it doesn't happen often. Most airports you will landing in with these missions will be unmanned airports, and you just have to announce position. Sometimes when you announce position, the bot will announce an incorrect runway. If that happens, you have to go into the communications box, choose select a runway to land, and choose the correct runway to avoid reputation penalties. It's a bug, nothing huge. Even if you get a reputation hit, it's only a small one, and you can easily deal with it later in the next flight. You'll make up for it. And by the way, in this case, the bot has announced the correct runway, so that's okay. You're getting close to the airport, so it's time to reduce your sim rate, and you can reduce it all 4 times at once and get to normal rate, or you can reduce it twice if you want. Just press twice on the reduce preset and fly at a fastish rate and approach the airport that way. It'll be quicker. I tend to do that, but I've got quite a bit of experience flying the Pilatus and using the sim rate. You might not be comfortable with that just yet. One way or another, get to that approach. As you recall, we are doing a direct approach. We're not flying the squiggly line, which is going straight in and turn right and land. So at some point you're going to have to reduce your sim rate to your normal rate and turn the autopilot off and take control of the plane. I tend to stay on autopilot for a while until I'm really close to the runway, but again, it's up to you how you want to play that. We've got a bit of weather here. The plane's dancing in the wind a little bit. It's gonna be a bit of an interesting landing. Nothing we can't handle, but it might be a little bit exciting. We're getting close to the final, and we're going to have to announce final. Now, that what I've said before applies here again. You want to make sure that bot announces the correct final. If it's announced an incorrect approach to start with, it's likely to announce an incorrect final. So that if that happens, you want to quickly get into the communication box, quickly select the correct runway, and quickly announce final. You might want to use the number keys, usually it's number 2, and it has to be done really quickly whilst you're still controlling the plane and landing. It can be a little bit tricky, but nothing that you can't handle.
India November Sierra is on final runway, 1 tree to land.
And of course, in this case, it's announced the correct runway, so we don't have that problem. So let's just put her down. I was too low, now I'm too high, but anyway, not gonna be the prettiest landing in the world. But I'm not here to teach you how to land, I'm here to teach you how to make money quickly. And that was a pretty soft touchdown there. We have to reduce speed now, so let's do that. Let's jump on those brakes. Yep, okay, now it says exit runway, so that's how the mission will end. In this case, the mission will end when I exit the runway. I don't have to taxi to hold short or taxi to a parking area. I'll just have to exit the runway, stop the plane, and shut the engine down.
Sweet home.
Okay, so that's that, and let's just see what the score is. And there we are, 1.13 million, minus the little fee that we pay for transferring the plane. That's a really good score for about a 20-minute flight, alright? And a bit of a level up as well, so we are happy. Now here's a quick example of another landing, a landing from a more common type of mission, a mission where you get to taxi to hold short and then taxi or skip to parking, rather than to simply stop somewhere off the runway and turn the engine off, as we did in the mission that we've just flown. Alright, so here we are coming in for a landing, announcing the final, and touching down on the runway. And as soon as we touch down, we're going to get these blue markers showing us where to go to get to the hold short. Again, the blue markers can be turned off if we don't want to have them by turning off the assistance options. I don't care, it doesn't bother me, it makes life easier, but again, if you're doing this for the reality of it and for the views, then you might want to turn them off. If you just want to make money for the time being, to buy a better plane to move forward, that's fine, leave them on. Entirely up to you. So here we go, we're turning around and we're approaching the hold short, which is 0.2 nautical miles away. Our flaps are on 40, we can reduce our flaps now, retract them whilst we are taxiing to the hold short. When we get to the hold short, the most important thing is to make an announcement, which is essentially an announcement to taxi to parking. It might be a request. If this is a manned airport, it would be a request for clearance to parking. In that case, you have to wait for the clearance to come, then you have to acknowledge it. Do not move the plane until those steps have taken place, or you will be penalized by losing some reputation. Again, not the end of the world if you lose a bit of reputation, because it's very easily regained in the next flight. No big deal, but let's try and do it the best way we can. Okay, so let's make the announcement to taxi to parking. It can be done by pressing enter, but if that doesn't work, sometimes it doesn't, just use the communication box.
Yankee Tango Oscar Alpha Traffic Pilatus Victor Hotel. Golf Tango uniform is taxiing to parking. Yankee Tango Oscar Alpha Traffic Pilatus Victor Hotel. Golf Tango uniform is taxiing to parking.
Of course, in this case, parking is really close, so I'm just gonna move it myself. If it was really far, I would skip. I've got no issue skipping. Again, the penalty for skipping is minimal in terms of money or experience. Minimal for this kind of skipping, as long as you've flown the whole flight. But the time saved does matter if it's a matter of 2, 3 or 4 minutes. Up to you. Well, that was another great flight, if I say so myself, and thanks for watching and all the best.